Hey dudes, I never thought I'd be posting here, but life has thrown me into the kind of situation that you only ever see in bad dramas or trashy soap operas. I'm married to Emily, and we've been together for 15 years, married for 12. We have a 14-year-old son, Tyler, who's honestly the best thing to ever happen to me. Emily and I haven't been perfect, but I thought we were happy. I thought we were solid. Until 3 days ago. It started with Tyler. He's always been pretty independent, but lately he's been acting off. He's quieter, moodier. When I tried to talk to him about it, he brushed me off like a typical teenager, so I figured maybe it was just school stress or growing pains. Then, out of nowhere, he came into my office while I was working from home. He looked pale, almost like he'd seen a ghost. I immediately knew something was wrong. "Dad, can I talk to you?" he asked. His voice cracked, and I could see tears welling up in his eyes. "Of course, buddy. What's going on?" He hesitated, like he was deciding whether or not to say whatever was eating him alive. Then he blurted it out. "I saw Mom with another guy." My heart stopped. "What do you mean?" I asked, trying to keep my voice calm, even though every nerve in my body was screaming. "Where did you see her?" "At the mall," he said, looking down at his shoes. "She told me she was going to the bookstore, but I saw her holding hands with some guy. They were laughing, and then they kissed." It felt like the floor had been ripped out from under me. I had no words. Tyler kept going, tears streaming down his face now. I didn't know what to do, Dad. I wanted to say something, but I just froze. "I'm sorry." "Hey, no," I interrupted, pulling him into a hug. "This isn't your fault. Not even a little bit." But inside, I was dying. The woman I thought I knew better than anyone was lying to me, betraying me, and my son had to witness it. The thought made my stomach churn. I told Tyler I'd handle it and that he didn't need to worry. But how do you even begin to handle something like this? Part of me wanted to call Emily right then and there, but another part of me didn't want to believe it. I needed to know for sure. So, I did something I never thought I'd do. I checked her phone while she was in the shower that evening. And there it was, a string of messages to a contact saved as Lila. But it was obvious Lila wasn't a Lila. The texts were filled with things no married woman should ever be saying to another man. Things like "can't wait to see you again" and "you make me feel so alive." There were even pictures. God, I wish I hadn't seen those pictures. I didn't confront her that night. I couldn't. I just sat in the living room, staring at nothing, while she came out of the bathroom and kissed me goodnight like everything was normal. Normal. What a joke. The next day, I couldn't focus on work. I couldn't eat. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw those messages, those pictures. My brain was on a loop, replaying every moment Emily and I had shared in the past few weeks. Every hug, every laugh, every "I love you." Were they all lies? Or was this some passing phase she thought she could hide forever? Tyler avoided me all morning. I could tell he was worried, but he didn't want to bring it up again. I didn't want him to. I needed to figure this out on my own. When Emily left for her weekly yoga class, something I now questioned entirely, I made up my mind. I wasn't going to sit in silence, waiting for more lies. I called a private investigator. It felt extreme, but I needed evidence. Real evidence. Something undeniable, in case this whole thing escalated into a battle. I wasn't going to be the guy blindsided with nothing but suspicions. The investigator was no nonsense, reassuring me that this sort of thing was, sadly, routine. He asked for her schedule, her known hangouts, anything that might help him track her movements. I felt like I was betraying her by sharing so much, but she'd already betrayed me. That evening, I decided I couldn't fake normalcy anymore. When she came home, smiling, all radiant like nothing was wrong, I wanted to scream. I didn't. Instead, I told her we needed to talk after Tyler went to bed. "Sure," she said, tilting her head with that concerned look she gives when she's pretending to care. "Everything okay?" I shrugged. Later, once Tyler was asleep, I confronted her. Not with the texts. I wanted to see if she'd lie straight to my face first. "Emily," I started, sitting across from her at the kitchen table. "Is there something you want to tell me?" She furrowed her brow, looking genuinely confused. Or maybe she was just good at playing the part. "What are you talking about?" "I mean," I said, keeping my voice steady, "is there something you've been hiding from me? Something I should know?" Ryan, you're scaring me. She reached across the table, but I didn't take her hand. Her smile faltered. What's going on? And then I went for it. Tyler saw you at the mall. With a man. Holding hands. Her face froze. It was the kind of pause where someone's brain scrambles for an excuse. A second too long. Then she laughed, a forced, high-pitched laugh. That's ridiculous, she said, shaking her head. I wasn't with anyone at the mall. Emily, don't lie to me. He saw you. And I saw the messages. Her face drained of color. Messages, she whispered. Don't play dumb. I snapped louder than I intended. I checked your phone. Lila, right? Or should I say him? Her expression changed instantly. The fake confusion vanished, replaced by something darker. Defensive. Are you serious right now? You went through my phone, she spat, standing up. Do you even hear yourself? That's such a violation, Ryan. How dare you? How dare I? I stood up too, my blood boiling. You're cheating on me, and you're pissed about privacy? Are you kidding me? It's not what you think, she yelled. God, you're so paranoid. He's just a friend. He's helping me with work stuff. Work stuff? I said, scoffing. Yeah, I'm sure work stuff requires you make me feel alive in late-night meetups at the mall. She glared at me, but her eyes were wet. You're blowing this out of proportion, she said, her voice shaking. It's not like I'm having sex with him. The words hit me like a slap. Not because they convinced me, but because she thought I was stupid enough to believe them. Get out, I said, my voice ice cold. Her jaw dropped. What? You heard me. Pack a bag. Leave. I'll figure out the rest in the morning. You're being ridiculous, Ryan, she cried, her voice rising. You're just going to believe Tyler over me? Over your wife? No, Emily, I said, shaking my head. I'm believing the truth. And I'm not letting you gaslight me into thinking I'm crazy. She stormed out of the kitchen, slamming the door to the bedroom. I stayed up all night, sitting on the couch, trying to piece together what to do next. The next morning, I woke up stiff and groggy from the couch, still unsure of how to move forward. Emily was in the kitchen, acting like nothing had happened. She poured coffee, scrolling on her phone, not even sparing me a glance when I walked in. The air between us was heavy, like a storm waiting to break. I didn't want to start another argument in front of Tyler, so I kept things civil, but the tension must have been obvious. Tyler barely looked at either of us. I could see it in his face. He was blaming himself for the blow-up. After breakfast, I pulled Tyler aside into his room. Hey, buddy, I said, sitting on the edge of his bed. He wouldn't look at me, his eyes fixed on his hands. Listen, I just want you to know that what's going on with your mom and me, it's not your fault. None of it. Okay. He nodded, but I could tell he wasn't convinced. Look at me, I said gently, waiting until his eyes met mine. You did the right thing by telling me. I'm proud of you for being honest. Are you going to leave her? He asked, his voice barely above a whisper. My heart sank. I don't know yet, I admitted. But whatever happens, I'm here for you. Always. We'll figure this out together. He hugged me then, tight and desperate, like he was clinging to something solid in a world that felt like quicksand. It broke me. Meanwhile, Emily stayed holed up in the bedroom for most of the morning, probably thinking up new ways to twist the narrative. I got a call from the private investigator around noon. He said he'd already tracked down her so-called work friend. His name was Adam, and he wasn't just some casual fling. They'd been meeting up regularly for months, at hotels, restaurants, even during Tyler's soccer practice. The PI even had pictures. Seeing her smiling, holding hands with another man, walking into a hotel room, it was like being stabbed in the gut. I thanked the PI and told him to keep digging. If this was heading for a divorce, I wanted all the ammunition I could get. That afternoon, Emily finally emerged, looking defensive as hell. She leaned against the kitchen counter, arms crossed, and said, "We need to talk." "Oh, now you're ready to talk?" I said, unable to keep the bitterness out of my voice. "I'm not doing this in front of Tyler," she snapped. "Let's go upstairs." I followed her, keeping my composure, but inside I was a hurricane. Once we were in the bedroom, she shut the door and turned to face me. "Ryan, this has gotten way out of hand," she began. "You're accusing me of things that aren't true." "Cut the crap, Emily," I interrupted. "I hired a PI. I've seen the pictures. I know everything. Her face went pale. For a moment, she said nothing, just stared at me like a deer caught in headlights. Then, in true Emily fashion, she doubled down. You had me followed? She hissed, her voice dripping with venom. That's so disgusting, Ryan. I can't believe you'd violate my privacy like that. You can't believe I violated your privacy? I said, my voice rising. You've been sneaking around behind my back for months, and you want to talk about privacy? Fine, she snapped, throwing up her hands. Yes, I've been seeing someone, but it's not what you think. Then what is it, Emily? Enlighten me. She faltered. I felt neglected, okay? You're always working, always busy. I needed someone to talk to. Someone who made me feel wanted. Wanted, I repeated, my voice shaking. I've spent the last 15 years giving you everything I have. Our house, our family, our life together. And that wasn't enough? Tears welled up in her eyes, but I wasn't buying the act. I never meant for it to go this far, she said, her voice trembling. It was just a mistake. A mistake, I said, laughing bitterly. A mistake doesn't last for months. A mistake doesn't destroy families. At that moment, I realized there was no saving this. She wasn't sorry for what she did. She was sorry she got caught. I want you to leave, I said, my voice calm but firm. Pack a bag and go. Stay with your lover, stay with a friend, I don't care. But you're not staying here. You can't do this, she cried. This is my home too. Not anymore, I said. I'll be talking to a lawyer on Monday. You should do the same. Her jaw dropped, and for a second I thought she might fight me on it. But then she stormed out of the room, slamming the door behind her. That night, Tyler and I ordered pizza and watched a movie together. I didn't tell him everything, but he knew enough to understand that things were about to change. And for the first time in days, I felt a sliver of peace. Emily didn't leave that night. She stayed in the guest room, slamming doors and muttering loud enough to make sure I could hear her indignation. She texted me at least a dozen times from the other side of the house, alternating between angry tirades and pitiful attempts at reconciliation. I ignored every single one. The next morning, Tyler and I had breakfast together while Emily stayed upstairs. I could tell he was anxious. His eyes darted toward the stairs every few seconds, like he was waiting for the next explosion. She's not coming down, I said, trying to reassure him. Not until we're done. He nodded but didn't say anything. I hated that this was his reality now. No kid should have to live in a house with this kind of tension. After breakfast, I told him to pack a bag. We're going to stay somewhere else for a few days, I said. His eyes widened. Are we leaving, Mom? He asked. For now, I said carefully, just to give her some space. And us too. The truth was I couldn't stand to be in the same house as her anymore. I needed clarity, a place to think, to plan. And Tyler needed to be away from the toxic atmosphere. Emily finally emerged around noon, looking disheveled and angrier than ever. She cornered me in the living room while Tyler was upstairs. You're really going to run away? She sneered. Take our son and just leave? That's low. Even for you. Low. I shot back, keeping my voice low to avoid dragging Tyler into the argument. You're the one who cheated, Emily. You don't get to play the victim here. I'm still his mother, she said, her voice rising. You can't just take him away from me. I'm not taking him away, I said, my patience wearing thin. We're staying somewhere else for a few days. You need to figure out what you want, and I need time to figure out how to deal with this mess you've created. Her face crumbled for a moment, and I thought she might finally show some real remorse. But instead, she crossed her arms and spat, fine. Go. But don't think for a second that I'm going to let you turn him against me. I didn't respond. There was no point. By that afternoon, Tyler and I were checked into a small motel across town. It wasn't fancy, but it was quiet, and that was all I needed. We spent the evening eating takeout and playing video games. Anything to distract us from the chaos we'd left behind. Before bed, Tyler asked me, "Is this forever?" I hesitated, unsure how to answer. "I don't know, buddy," I said finally. "But whatever happens, we're going to be okay. I promise." That night, after Tyler fell asleep, I sat alone in the dimly lit room, scrolling through my phone. Emily had texted me again, begging me to come home, accusing me of overreacting, and unbelievably, demanding I apologize for humiliating her. I didn't respond. Instead, I drafted an email to a divorce lawyer I'd found online. It was time to start preparing for what came next. The next morning, I dropped Tyler off at school. He clung to me for a moment longer than usual before heading inside, his backpack slung over one shoulder. Watching him walk away made my chest tighten. He was carrying so much weight for a kid his age. I promised myself I'd do whatever it took to make this easier for him. From the school, I drove straight to the office of a divorce attorney. Her name was Linda Grayson, and she came highly recommended online. She was a sharp, no-nonsense type with a calm demeanor that immediately put me at ease. I explained everything: the affair, the messages, the pictures, the impact on Tyler. I even mentioned how Emily had tried to gaslight me, turning her betrayal into a weapon to make me doubt myself. Linda listened intently, taking notes as I spoke. When I was done, she leaned back in her chair. "You've already taken the most important first step, Ryan," she said. "You've confronted the situation head-on, and you're gathering evidence. That will be crucial if this goes to court." "What about custody?" I asked, my throat tight. "Tyler wants to stay with me, but I don't want to hurt him by dragging this out." Linda nodded. "Family court prioritizes the best interests of the child. If Tyler expresses a clear preference, and there's evidence to suggest that living with you would be more stable, you'll have a strong case. That being said, the courts tend to favor joint custody unless there's proof of neglect or harm." I thought about how Emily had ignored Tyler's calls at the skating rink while she was with Adam, how she'd chosen her affair over her son in every way that mattered. "I'll do whatever it takes," I said firmly. "We'll start by filing for a temporary custody agreement," Linda said. "That will give you some breathing room while we work on the long-term case. In the meantime, keep documenting everything." When I left Linda's office, I felt a strange mix of relief and dread. Relief because I finally had a plan, and dread because I knew the road ahead would be messy. Emily wasn't the kind of person to go quietly. That afternoon, Tyler and I went back to the motel. He seemed more relaxed than he had in days, even joking about how bad the motel's cable selection was. I decided to keep things light, avoiding the subject of his mom for now. He needed a break from all of this. But later that night, as we were getting ready for bed, he surprised me. "Dad," he said hesitantly. "Yeah, buddy? Did Mom lie to you too? Like about the guy at the mall?" I froze. I hadn't expected him to bring it up, and I wasn't sure how much to say. But I'd promised myself I wouldn't hide the truth from him. "She did," I admitted, sitting on the edge of his bed. "She told me it wasn't what it looked like, but I know that's not true." He nodded slowly, staring at the blanket bunched in his hands. "I don't get it. Why would she do that?" "I don't know," I said honestly. "Sometimes people make choices that hurt the ones they love. It doesn't mean they don't care about us, but it does mean we have to protect ourselves." Tyler looked up at me, his eyes serious. "I don't want to see her," he said quietly. "Not right now." I swallowed hard, my heart breaking for him. "Okay," I said. "You don't have to. Not until you're ready." He nodded, and I pulled him into a hug. I could feel his little body trembling against mine, and it took everything I had not to break down. Part 5. The lawyer and the truth. The next morning, I dropped Tyler off at school. He clung to me for a moment longer than usual before heading inside, his backpack slung over one shoulder. Watching him walk away made my chest tighten. He was carrying so much weight for a kid his age. I promised myself I'd do whatever it took to make this easier for him. From the school, I drove straight to the office of a divorce attorney. Her name was Linda Grayson, and she came highly recommended online. She was a sharp, no-nonsense type with a calm demeanor that immediately put me at ease. I explained everything: the affair, the messages, the pictures, the impact on Tyler. I even mentioned how Emily had tried to gaslight me, turning her betrayal into a weapon to make me doubt myself. Linda listened intently, taking notes as I spoke. When I was done, she leaned back in her chair. "You've already taken the most important first step, Ryan," she said. "You've confronted the situation head-on, and you're gathering evidence. That will be crucial if this goes to court." "What about custody?" I asked, my throat tight. "Tyler wants to stay with me, but I don't want to hurt him by dragging this out. Linda nodded. Family court prioritizes the best interests of the child. If Tyler expresses a clear preference, and there's evidence to suggest that living with you would be more stable, you'll have a strong case. That being said, the courts tend to favor joint custody unless there's proof of neglect or harm. I thought about how Emily had ignored Tyler's calls at the skating rink while she was with Adam. How she'd chosen her affair over her son in every way that mattered. I'll do whatever it takes, I said firmly. We'll start by filing for a temporary custody agreement, Linda said. That will give you some breathing room while we work on the long-term case. In the meantime, keep documenting everything. When I left Linda's office, I felt a strange mix of relief and dread. Relief because I finally had a plan, and dread because I knew the road ahead would be messy. Emily wasn't the kind of person to go quietly. That afternoon, Tyler and I went back to the motel. He seemed more relaxed than he had in days, even joking about how bad the motel's cable selection was. I decided to keep things light, avoiding the subject of his mom for now. He needed a break from all of this. But later that night, as we were getting ready for bed, he surprised me. "Dad," he said hesitantly. "Yeah, buddy. Did Mom lie to you too? Like, about the guy at the mall?" I froze. I hadn't expected him to bring it up, and I wasn't sure how much to say. But I'd promised myself I wouldn't hide the truth from him. "She did," I admitted, sitting on the edge of his bed. "She told me it wasn't what it looked like, but I know that's not true." He nodded slowly, staring at the blanket bunched in his hands. "I don't get it. Why would she do that?" "I don't know," I said honestly. Sometimes people make choices that hurt the ones they love. It doesn't mean they don't care about us, but it does mean we have to protect ourselves. Tyler looked up at me, his eyes serious. "I don't want to see her," he said quietly. "Not right now." I swallowed hard, my heart breaking for him. "Okay," I said. "You don't have to. Not until you're ready." He nodded, and I pulled him into a hug. I could feel his little body trembling against mine, and it took everything I had not to break down. Later that night, while Tyler slept, I got another text from Emily. "Can we talk?" "Please, Ryan. I'm sorry. I'll explain everything." I stared at the message for a long time before typing back. "It's too late for that. I'll be filing for divorce. Please don't contact me unless it's about Tyler." Her response came almost immediately. "You're being so unfair. I made a mistake, but I love you. We can fix this if you just talk to me." I didn't reply. There was nothing left to say. The following days were a blur of awkward silences, tension-filled texts, and mounting anger. Emily was relentless. She called, texted, even sent emails, each one a cocktail of guilt-tripping, blame-shifting, and half-hearted apologies. But the more she reached out, the less inclined I felt to engage. Tyler, thankfully, seemed to be doing better now that we were away from the house. The weight of his mom's actions still lingered in his eyes, but he was smiling more, cracking jokes again. He even brought up the idea of going to a baseball game together, a small sliver of normalcy in the chaos. I was beginning to feel like I had my feet under me again, until everything blew up. It was a Saturday afternoon. Tyler and I had just gotten back to the motel after a trip to the park when my phone buzzed. It was Emily. "Emily, we need to talk. Now." "I'm coming to the motel." I stared at the message, my pulse quickening. Before I could type a response, the next text came in. "Emily, if you don't let me in, I'll call the cops and tell them you kidnapped Tyler." My stomach dropped. I'd expected drama, but this was a whole new level. I grabbed my phone and immediately called my lawyer. "Linda, she's threatening to call the cops and accuse me of kidnapping Tyler," I said, pacing the tiny motel room. Linda's voice was calm, like she'd dealt with this 1,000 times. "First of all, stay calm. Do you have any documentation showing you've been caring for Tyler with her knowledge?" I thought about the texts Emily had sent me over the past few days. Some of them acknowledged that Tyler was with me. "Yes," I said. "Good. Save all of it. If she does call the police, show them the messages and explain the situation. You're not doing anything illegal. She's trying to scare you. Should I let her in?" I asked. Linda hesitated. "That's up to you. But if you do, record everything. You need to protect yourself. Got it, I said, hanging up. I turned to Tyler, who was sitting on the bed, watching me with wide eyes. Hey, buddy, I said, kneeling down in front of him. Mom's on her way over. I'm going to talk to her, but I want you to stay in the bathroom, okay? Just until I know things are settled. He nodded, his face pale. Is she mad at me? He asked softly. No, this isn't your fault, I said quickly. She's just upset, but I'll handle it. Don't worry. He shuffled into the bathroom, and I gave him a reassuring smile before closing the door. Then I sat on the edge of the bed, my phone ready to record, and waited. Emily arrived like a storm, pounding on the door and yelling loud enough to draw the attention of the motel's other guests. I opened the door, stepping outside to meet her. What the hell, Ryan? She hissed, her eyes wild. You can't just take my son and disappear. I didn't disappear, I said, keeping my voice steady. You knew exactly where we were. I told you we needed space, and you agreed. I didn't agree to this, she snapped, gesturing around at the motel. You're turning Tyler against me, making me look like the bad guy. You did that yourself, I said coldly. I'm not the one who cheated. Her face twisted with fury. You think you're so perfect, don't you? Like you've never made a mistake? This isn't about me, I said. It's about what you've done to this family. She glared at me, breathing hard. I want to see Tyler. Not right now, I said firmly. He doesn't want to see you. Her expression crumbled for a moment, raw pain flashing across her face. But just as quickly, it hardened again. You can't keep him from me, Ryan. I'm his mother. And I'm his father, I said. We'll figure out custody in court. You're going to regret this, she said, her voice low and venomous. I promise you that. With that, she stormed off, slamming her car door and peeling out of the parking lot. I stood there for a moment, my heart pounding, before going back inside. Tyler peeked out of the bathroom, his face pale. Is she gone? He asked. Yeah, I said, sitting down beside him. She's gone. That night, I filed for an emergency custody order. Emily had made her intentions clear, and I wasn't going to let her weaponize Tyler against me. I was done playing her games. The emergency custody process moved faster than I expected. Linda helped me file the paperwork, outlining Emily's affair, her erratic behavior, and Tyler's explicit request not to see her. I also attached screenshots of her text threatening to call the police on me and accusing me of kidnapping. Linda assured me these would paint a clear picture of her instability. For the next few days, Tyler and I stayed under the radar. I didn't want Emily showing up again, and I didn't want to risk another ugly scene. We kept things light, movies, games, even ice cream for dinner one night. But underneath it all, I could feel the weight of everything pressing down on both of us. The first court hearing for the emergency custody order was scheduled just 5 days later. Emily showed up in full force, dressed to the nines and dripping with righteous indignation. She brought her own lawyer, a slick-looking guy in a shiny suit who reeked of smug confidence. Tyler wasn't in the courtroom. Linda had advised against it. Instead, she'd arranged for his statement to be submitted separately. He'd written it himself, in his own words, explaining that he didn't want to see his mom right now because of what he'd witnessed and how it had made him feel. When the judge asked why I'd taken Tyler without formally notifying Emily, I stayed calm and honest. Your Honor, I said, Tyler came to me, deeply upset, after seeing his mother with another man. I took him to give him space from a situation that was causing him emotional harm. I've kept her informed the entire time. Emily's lawyer tried to spin it as parental alienation, accusing me of manipulating Tyler and poisoning him against his mother. But Linda was prepared. She handed over the texts Emily had sent, her threats, her denials, her erratic behavior. She even showed pictures of Emily with Adam, provided by the private investigator. Emily's lawyer objected, saying the pictures were irrelevant. But the judge allowed them, noting that the child's best interest was paramount and that the context of the home environment mattered. When it was Emily's turn to speak, her tears came fast and heavy. She painted herself as a misunderstood mother who'd made a mistake but was being unfairly punished. I love my son, she said, her voice trembling. I would never do anything to hurt him. Her performance was Oscar-worthy, But the evidence told a different story. In the end, the judge granted me temporary full custody with supervised visitation for Emily. She was allowed 2 visits per week under the supervision of a court-appointed guardian. The judge also ordered family counseling, emphasizing that Tyler's feelings needed to be prioritized. Emily's face was a mix of rage and despair as the decision was read. I could almost see the gears turning in her head, trying to figure out her next move. That evening, Tyler and I celebrated the small victory with pizza and a movie. He didn't know all the details of what had happened in court, but he seemed relieved when I told him that he wouldn't have to see his mom until he was ready. "Do you think she'll ever stop lying?" he asked, his voice small. "I don't know," I said honestly. "But what I do know is that you and I are going to be okay. We're in this together." He nodded, a faint smile on his face, and for the first time in weeks, I felt like we were on solid ground. The first supervised visitation was scheduled for the following Saturday. Tyler didn't say much about it leading up to the day, but I could tell he was dreading it. He kept asking if he had to go, and as much as I wanted to shield him, I knew the court order wasn't optional. The visit was held at a local family center, a sterile, cheerless place with generic paintings of flowers on the walls and a play area filled with mismatched toys. Emily was already there when we arrived, sitting stiffly in one of the chairs. Her makeup was perfect, her clothes impeccable, but her eyes gave her away, dark, puffy, and desperate. Tyler hesitated at the door, looking back at me. "Do you have to leave, Dad?" he asked quietly. "I'll be right outside," I promised, squeezing his shoulder. "And the supervisor will be in there the whole time. You're safe." He nodded reluctantly and walked in. I watched as the door closed behind him, my heart sinking. All I could do now was wait. The visit was scheduled for 1 hour. It felt like an eternity. I sat in my car in the parking lot, scrolling through my phone aimlessly, trying to distract myself from the endless what-ifs running through my head. What if she tried to manipulate him? What if she guilt-tripped him into forgiving her? What if she said something that made everything worse? When the hour was finally up, Tyler came out with the supervisor. His face was blank, unreadable. Emily stayed behind in the room, probably waiting until we were gone. "How did it go?" I asked cautiously as he climbed into the car. He shrugged. "She cried a lot," he said flatly. "Kept saying she missed me and that she was sorry. But, I don't know, Dad. It didn't feel real." "What do you mean?" I asked, glancing at him in the rearview mirror. "It's like she was trying too hard," he said, frowning. "She kept saying all the right things, but it felt fake, you know? Like she just wanted me to say I forgive her, so she could stop feeling bad." I gripped the steering wheel tighter. "You don't have to forgive her until you're ready," I said firmly. "Or at all, if that's what you decide. That's up to you, Tyler. No one can force you." He nodded, staring out the window. "I don't think I'm ready." "That's okay," I said, my voice softening. "Take your time." When we got back to the motel, I called Linda to update her on how the visit went. She was pleased that Tyler had spoken honestly with the supervisor and reassured me that his feelings would be documented in the visitation report. But as the days passed, I started noticing subtle changes in Tyler. He was quieter, more withdrawn. At first, I thought it was just the stress of everything catching up to him. But then, one night, as we were eating dinner, he suddenly asked, "Dad, do you think Mom's sorry because she hurt me, or because she got caught?" The question hit me like a ton of bricks. He wasn't just a kid dealing with his parents' breakup. He was grappling with something far more complicated, the realization that his mother might not be the person he thought she was. "I think," I said carefully, "that sometimes people don't even know why they're sorry. They just know they don't like feeling guilty." He nodded slowly, mulling it over. "That's what I thought," he said quietly. That night, after Tyler went to bed, I sat on the couch, staring at my phone. Emily had texted me earlier, asking how Tyler was doing and if she could call him. I hadn't replied yet. Part of me wanted to say no outright, but another part of me knew that wasn't fair to Tyler. He had the right to make his own decisions about their relationship when he was ready. So I texted her back. "He's not ready to talk yet. Give him time." Her reply came almost instantly. "Emily say, I'm trying, Ryan. I just want to fix this. For him. For us. For us. I laughed bitterly, shaking my head. There was no us anymore, and there never would be. But for Tyler's sake, I swallowed the bitterness and typed back. Focus on him. That's all that matters now. After that first visitation, I expected Emily to back off a little to give Tyler the space he clearly needed. But instead, she seemed to double down. Every day brought a new message. Updates on how much she missed him, how hard she was trying, or thinly veiled guilt trips disguised as heartfelt apologies. Tyler noticed too. I'd left his phone free for her messages, thinking he should have the option to read or respond if he wanted. He didn't. Most of the time, he'd glance at her messages and hand the phone back to me, muttering, "She doesn't get it." I didn't either. Honestly, how could someone so desperate to prove their sincerity keep failing so spectacularly? The second supervised visitation didn't go much better than the first. Tyler agreed to go, albeit reluctantly, but he came out looking even more dejected than before. She kept asking why I don't want to come home, he said on the drive back. Like, she didn't even ask how I was doing. It was all about her. My knuckles tightened on the steering wheel. "I'm sorry, buddy," I said. "That's not fair to you." He nodded, staring out the window. I told her I needed time, and she just kept saying she was sorry. Over and over. I don't know what she wants me to say. "You don't have to say anything," I reassured him. "She made her choices. It's not your job to fix them." He didn't respond, but I could tell he was mulling it over. That night, after Tyler had gone to bed, I got another message from Emily. "Emily, why are you letting him hate me? I'm trying so hard, Ryan. I don't deserve this." I stared at the screen, my stomach churning. She didn't deserve this? What about Tyler? What about the fact that her actions had forced a 14-year-old to question the foundation of his family? I wanted to lash out, to unload all the anger and frustration I'd been bottling up since this started. But I didn't. Instead, I typed back a single sentence. "Stop making this about you." Her response came almost immediately. "Emily say, I'm his mother. Did I ask about me?" I didn't reply. The next day, Linda called with an update. The supervisor's report from the first 2 visitations was in, and it wasn't flattering for Emily. According to the report, she spent most of the time talking about herself, repeatedly trying to elicit forgiveness from Tyler, and showing little interest in how he was feeling. "This is good for your case," Linda said. "The judge will see that her focus isn't where it needs to be." "Good for the case, maybe," I said, "but it's not good for Tyler. Every visit just seems to make him more upset." "Unfortunately, that's often how these things go," Linda said gently. "But if he continues to express that he doesn't want to see her, we can use that to push for a revised custody agreement." "Do you think we'll get it?" I asked. "It's possible," she said. "But courts are reluctant to sever a parent's access entirely unless there's clear evidence of harm." I sighed, rubbing my temples. "I just want what's best for him." "And you're doing that," Linda said firmly. "Just keep documenting everything. We'll get there." That evening, I sat down with Tyler to talk about the visitations. I didn't want to push him, but I also didn't want him to feel like he was alone in this. "How are you feeling about seeing Mom?" I asked. He shrugged, fiddling with a piece of string he'd pulled from his hoodie. "I don't know. It's weird." "Weird how?" "Like, she's not the same," he said. "She used to be fun, you know? She'd joke around and ask about my games and stuff. But now it's like she's acting or something. Like she's trying to be what she thinks I want." I nodded, my heart breaking for him. "I think she's struggling with how to fix things," I said carefully. "But that's not your responsibility, okay? You don't have to take care of her feelings." He nodded, but didn't look convinced. "What if she never gets it?" he asked quietly. "Then that's on her," I said. "You deserve to be around people who make you feel safe and loved. That's what matters." As Tyler went to bed that night, I felt a mix of pride and sadness. He was handling this mess with more maturity than most adults I knew. But he shouldn't have to. He deserved better from Emily from all of this. A few days after our conversation, I got a call from the court-appointed visitation supervisor. Emily had canceled her next session with Tyler. "No explanación, no rescheduling." Just a terse email stating she couldn't make it. At first, I was relieved. Tyler wouldn't have to sit through another awkward, forced encounter. But as the days passed without word from Emily, my relief turned into confusion and then suspicion. Emily wasn't the type to back down without a fight. Something was brewing. I could feel it. That suspicion was confirmed a week later when Linda called with an update. Emily had filed a motion for a revised custody arrangement, claiming that I was alienating Tyler from her. The documents included screenshots of texts I'd sent her, particularly the one where I told her Tyler wasn't ready to see her. She argued that I was manipulating him, twisting his feelings to turn him against her. Linda didn't seem fazed. "This is standard in cases like this," she said. "She's trying to shift the blame onto you. The court will see through it, especially with the visitation reports supporting your case." But I was furious. Not for myself, but for Tyler. He was the one caught in the crossfire, forced to navigate this minefield of adult egos and broken trust. How dare she weaponize his pain against me? That night, as Tyler and I sat on the couch watching a movie, he glanced at me hesitantly. "Dad, do you think Mom's mad at me?" he asked. "No, buddy," I said immediately. "She's not mad at you. She's just struggling to figure things out." "Then why won't she leave me alone about forgiving her?" he asked. His voice cracked slightly, and I realized just how deeply this was affecting him. "She wants things to go back to the way they were," I said gently. "But that's not something she can force. Forgiveness has to come on your terms, not hers." He nodded, but his brow furrowed. "Do you think I should forgive her?" he asked after a moment. I sighed, choosing my words carefully. "I think forgiveness can be a good thing, but only if you're ready. And forgiving someone doesn't mean you have to forget what they did or let them back into your life the same way. It just means you're letting go of the anger for your own sake." Tyler didn't respond right away, but I could see the wheels turning. Eventually, he leaned into my side, resting his head on my shoulder. "I'm not ready," he said softly. "That's okay," I said, wrapping my arm around him. "Take all the time you need." The next court hearing came quickly. Emily's lawyer presented her accusations of parental alienation with dramatic flair, painting me as a bitter ex bent on destroying her relationship with Tyler. He even brought up the canceled visitations, spinning them as evidence that I was discouraging Tyler from seeing her. Linda, as always, was unflappable. She presented the visitation supervisor's reports, Tyler's written statement, and the messages Emily had sent me. The guilt trips, the threats, the blame shifting. She also highlighted Emily's affair, arguing that her choices had directly caused the rift with Tyler. When the judge asked me to speak, I kept it simple. "My priority is Tyler's well-being," I said. "I've encouraged him to talk to his mom when he's ready, but I won't force him to do something that makes him uncomfortable. This isn't about me or Emily. It's about what's best for our son." The judge nodded thoughtfully. "And what do you think that is?" she asked. "I think Tyler needs stability," I said. "Right now, that means staying with me and having space to process everything that's happened. If and when he's ready to rebuild his relationship with his mom, I'll support that. But it has to be on his terms." The decision wasn't immediate, but when it came a week later, it felt like a weight had been lifted. The judge upheld the temporary custody arrangement, citing Emily's inability to prioritize Tyler's needs during visitation. She'd still have supervised visits, but they'd be reduced to once a month until further review. Emily's response was predictable. She called me furious, accusing me of poisoning Tyler against her. I didn't engage. I didn't need to. The court's decision spoke for itself. That night, as Tyler and I played a board game, he looked up at me with a small smile. "I think things are getting better," he said. I smiled back, ruffling his hair. "I think so too, buddy." And for the first time in weeks, I believed it. Life started to settle into a new rhythm after the court decision. With Emily's visitation reduced, Tyler had more breathing room, and it showed. He laughed more, talked more, and even started spending more time with his friends. It felt like the storm was finally passing, even if the clouds still lingered on the horizon. But Emily wasn't done. The texts continued, sporadic, desperate, and increasingly erratic. Some were tearful apologies, while others were angry accusations. She sent pictures of old family vacations, messages reminiscing about happier times, and even a long-winded email claiming that Tyler's feelings were just a phase, something I should correct for the sake of their relationship. I didn't respond. Every reply would have been another opening for her to twist the narrative, and I was done giving her that power. One evening, as Tyler and I were cleaning up after dinner, his phone buzzed. He glanced at it, frowned, and handed it to me without a word. It was a text from Emily. Emily, right. I miss you so much, sweetheart. Why won't you talk to me? Don't you remember how much fun we used to have? Please, baby, I need to see you. You're breaking my heart. I clenched my jaw, forcing myself to stay calm. Do you want to respond? I asked, holding the phone out to him. He shook his head. She's just trying to make me feel bad, he said, his voice steady but sad. I don't want to talk to her when she's like this. Okay, I said, putting the phone on the counter. You don't have to. Do you think she'll ever stop? He asked quietly. I don't know, I admitted. But no matter what, you don't have to do anything you're not ready for. This is your choice, Tyler. He nodded, his shoulders relaxing slightly. Thanks, Dad. A few weeks later, the first of Emily's new, reduced visitations arrived. Tyler reluctantly agreed to go, saying he wanted to try one more time. I could tell he was nervous, but I didn't push. This was his decision, and I was proud of him for facing it head on. When I dropped him off at the family center, he gave me a small, brave smile before heading inside. I stayed in the parking lot, the engine idling, my heart pounding in my chest. Every fiber of me wanted to storm in there and shield him from whatever was about to happen. But I knew I couldn't. He had to do this on his own. An hour later, the door to the center opened, and Tyler walked out, his head down. I got out of the car, meeting him halfway. How did it go? I asked gently. He looked up at me, his eyes red-rimmed but determined. She just kept crying, he said, and saying how much she misses me. But it didn't feel real, you know? It felt like she was sad for herself, not for what she did. I nodded, my heart breaking for him. I'm sorry, Buggy. I told her I wasn't ready to forgive her, he said, his voice steady despite the tears streaming down his cheeks. I said I need time, and she got mad. She said I was being unfair. You were honest, I said, pulling him into a hug. That's what matters. You don't owe her anything, Tyler. Your feelings are valid. He clung to me for a moment before pulling back. I don't think I want to go to the visits anymore, he said. At least not for a while. That's okay, I said, ruffling his hair. We'll talk to the lawyer and figure it out. That night, after Tyler went to bed, I sat on the couch, staring at my phone. Emily had texted me several times, each message angrier than the last. Emily, right. He's a child, Ryan. You can't let him make these decisions. He doesn't know what he wants. This is your fault. You've turned him against me. You're ruining his life by cutting me out of it. I didn't reply. Instead, I forwarded the messages to Linda, adding a note about Tyler's request to stop visitation for the time being. Her response was quick and reassuring. We'll bring this up with the court, she wrote. Tyler's feelings are well documented. The judge will take them seriously. As I turned off my phone and headed to bed, I felt a quiet resolve settle over me. This battle wasn't over, but I wasn't fighting for myself. I was fighting for Tyler, for his peace, his safety, and his right to choose the kind of relationship he wanted with his mom. Emily could rage and blame all she wanted. I wasn't backing down. The weeks that followed were quiet, at least on the surface. Emily's messages slowed, though they didn't stop entirely. I suspected her lawyer had advised her to tone it down, probably worried the barrage of texts would hurt her case. It didn't matter. Tyler was firm in his decision. He didn't want to attend visitations, and he didn't want to see his mom. Linda filed a motion to temporarily suspend visitations based on Tyler's expressed wishes and his emotional well-being. While we waited for the court date, life began to take on a semblance of normalcy. Tyler seemed lighter, like he could finally breathe again. One evening, as we were watching a movie, Tyler paused it and turned to me. Dad, he said, his voice steady. I want to talk to the judge. The words took me by surprise. What do you mean? I asked. I want to tell the judge how I feel, he said. I don't think she's listening to me. Not really. Maybe if I say it to her face, she'll understand. I hesitated. That's a big step, Tyler. Are you sure you're ready for something like that? He nodded, his eyes determined. I don't want her to keep saying I'm just a kid and I don't know what I'm talking about. I need her to know it's my choice. I swallowed the lump in my throat and nodded. Okay, I said. If that's what you want, I'll make sure it happens. Linda was supportive of Tyler's decision, though she cautioned that it might be an emotional experience. The judge will likely agree to speak with him in chambers, without his mother present, she explained. It's informal, but it can still be intimidating. Are you sure he's ready for that? I think he is, I said, but I'll talk to him again and make sure. When I brought it up with Tyler later that night, he didn't hesitate. I want to do it, he said. I need her to hear me. The day of the hearing arrived faster than I expected. Tyler dressed carefully, wearing the button-up shirt he usually reserved for picture day at school. He was nervous. I could see it in the way he fidgeted with the cuffs, but he didn't waver. At the courthouse, Linda explained the process to him one last time. The judge is kind, and she'll listen to everything you have to say, she said gently. Just speak from your heart. Be honest. Tyler nodded, taking a deep breath. I will. When it was time, the bailiff escorted him into the judge's chambers. I wasn't allowed to go with him, which was both frustrating and heartbreaking. All I could do was sit outside, pacing the hallway and praying he felt confident enough to say what he needed to say. When Tyler finally emerged, he looked calm, even a little relieved. He walked straight over to me and hugged me tightly. How did it go? I asked softly. She listened, he said simply. What did you tell her? I told her I don't hate Mom, he said, but I don't trust her right now. I told her I'm not ready to forgive her yet, and I need time. His words hit me like a punch to the chest. I knelt down so I could look him in the eye. I'm so proud of you, Tyler, I said. That took a lot of courage. He smiled faintly. I just hope she gets it. The judge's decision came a week later. Visitations were suspended indefinitely, pending a review in 6 months. The judge acknowledged Tyler's maturity and the validity of his feelings, emphasizing that his well-being took precedence over everything else. When I told Tyler the news, he looked relieved. Does this mean I don't have to see her anymore? He asked. For now, no, I said, but it's still up to you. If you ever change your mind, we can work something out. He nodded, but his expression was resolute. I don't think I will. Emily's reaction was as expected, angry, defensive, and full of blame. She called me, leaving a voicemail accusing me of brainwashing Tyler and threatening to appeal the decision. But for the first time since this all started, I didn't feel anger or fear. I felt pity, because Emily still couldn't see the truth, even when it was staring her in the face. That night, Tyler and I celebrated with his favorite dinner, burgers and fries, and a marathon of his favorite TV show. As he laughed at something on the screen, I realized that for the first time in months, he looked at peace. And that made all of it worth it. In the weeks following the court's decision, life began to feel normal again, or as normal as it could be after everything. Tyler seemed lighter, his mood steadier. He started excelling in school again, rejoined his soccer team, and spent more time with his friends. For the first time in what felt like forever, there were no tense conversations about visitations, no unexpected texts or calls from Emily demanding attention. It was quiet, and quiet felt like a gift. One night after dinner, Tyler surprised me with a question. Do you think Mom will ever change? He asked, fiddling with the hem of his hoodie. The question caught me off guard. I don't know, I said honestly. I think people can change if they really want to, but it's not easy. It takes a lot of work. He nodded thoughtfully, chewing on his lip. I hope she does, he said quietly. Not so I can forgive her, but so she can be better for herself. His words floored me. For a kid who had every reason to hold on to anger, his perspective was humbling. That's a really kind way to think about it, I said, ruffling his hair. You're a good person, Tyler. He smiled, a little embarrassed, and went back to scrolling on his phone. But his words stayed with me long after he went to bed. Emily's contact grew sparse. The occasional text asking about Tyler's health or schoolwork trickled in, but there were no more dramatic pleas or accusations. Linda thought she might be regrouping to prepare for a formal appeal, but I suspected something else. She was realizing that her old tactics weren't working. One afternoon, I got a surprising email from her. It wasn't defensive or angry, just reflective. She admitted that she'd been selfish, that she'd been too focused on her own pain to see how much she was hurting Tyler. She didn't ask for forgiveness or make excuses. She just said she was trying to do better. It wasn't much, but it was a start. I showed the email to Tyler, letting him decide how to respond. He read it carefully, his expression unreadable. "Do you think she means it?" he asked. "I don't know," I said. "But it's a good sign that she's trying to take responsibility." He nodded, setting the phone down. "I'm not ready to talk to her," he said. "But maybe someday. Whenever you're ready," I said. "It's your choice." As time passed, Tyler and I carved out a new version of normal. We went to soccer games, cooked new recipes, some disastrous, others surprisingly good, and even planned a weekend camping trip. It felt good to focus on the future, to leave the pain and chaos of the past behind us. Emily stayed in the background, reaching out occasionally, but respecting the boundaries we'd set. I didn't know if she'd truly change, but for the first time, I felt like she was trying. Maybe it was too late to repair the damage between us, but there was still a chance for her to rebuild something with Tyler, if she earned it. One evening, as we were packing for our camping trip, Tyler looked up from his bag and smiled. "You know," he said, "I think we're going to be okay." I smiled back, my heart full. "Yeah, buddy, I think we are." The camping trip turned out to be just what we needed. Tyler and I spent the weekend hiking, fishing, and roasting marshmallows over a campfire. It was the kind of pure, uninterrupted bonding time that had been missing during all the chaos. For 2 days, we didn't talk about court hearings or Emily or anything that weighed on us. We just laughed, swapped stories, and enjoyed the peace of the outdoors. As we were packing up to head home, Tyler said something that caught me off guard. "I think I might want to talk to Mom again, just to see if she's really trying." I froze, my hands halfway through folding the tent. "Are you sure?" I asked carefully. He nodded. "I don't want to forgive her yet," he said quickly. "But, I don't know. I guess I want to see if she's different." I took a deep breath, trying to hide my own hesitation. "Okay," I said finally. "We can set something up on your terms." When we got back, I emailed Linda to let her know. She suggested having a counselor facilitate the meeting to make sure Tyler felt safe and supported. I talked to Tyler about it, and he agreed. "But no pressure," he said firmly. "If it gets weird, I'm leaving." "Absolutely," I said. "You're in control." We arranged the meeting for a Saturday afternoon at a neutral location, an office belonging to the counselor who'd been assigned to Tyler's case. Emily agreed to the setup without complaint, which surprised me. Maybe she really was trying. The day of the meeting, Tyler was nervous but resolute. As we waited in the counselor's office, he fidgeted with the zipper of his jacket, his leg bouncing restlessly. "What if she's just pretending?" he asked. "Then we'll know," I said. "And you don't have to do this again if you don't want to." He nodded, taking a deep breath as the counselor opened the door. "Ready?" He stood up, squaring his shoulders. "Yeah, let's do this." I stayed in the waiting room while Tyler and Emily talked, the counselor present to guide the conversation. It felt like the longest hour of my life. Every few minutes, I glanced at the clock, my mind racing with possibilities. Would she try to gild him again? Would he come out angry, hurt, or, worst of all, disappointed? When the door finally opened, Tyler walked out, his expression calm. Emily followed a few steps behind, her face a mix of hope and caution. "How did it go?" I asked him as we headed to the car. He shrugged, his lips twitching into a faint smile. "It was okay. She said she's sorry, like really sorry this time." And I kind of believed her. I felt a mix of relief and caution. "Do you think you'll want to see her again?" "Maybe," he said, looking thoughtful. "But only if she keeps trying." I told her that. "And what did she say?" "She said she'd wait as long as I needed," he said. "And I think she meant it." That night, Tyler seemed lighter, like a small weight had been lifted from his shoulders. I knew this was just the beginning of a long process, but it was a step forward, one that he'd chosen for himself. As I tucked him in, he looked up at me and smiled. "Thanks for letting me do this, Dad," he said. "I think it helped. I'm proud of you," I said, my voice thick with emotion. "You're brave, Tyler. Never forget that." He grinned, closing his eyes. "Good night, Dad." "Good night, buddy." For the first time in months, I felt a flicker of hope. Not just for Tyler, but for all of us. Months passed, and slowly, life began to rebuild itself. Tyler's tentative steps toward reconnecting with Emily were cautious, but meaningful. He agreed to another meeting, and then another. Each time, I could see him gauging her sincerity, measuring her actions against her words. To her credit, Emily seemed to be genuinely trying. She was more measured in her approach, more focused on listening than demanding. Still, Tyler held firm boundaries. Visits were short and always supervised, and he refused to discuss anything he wasn't comfortable with. It wasn't perfect, but it was progress. One evening, after another successful visit, Tyler and I sat down for dinner. He seemed thoughtful, pushing his food around on his plate. "You okay, buddy?" I asked. "Yeah," he said, nodding. I think I might be ready to forgive her. Not forget, but forgive." I put down my fork, feeling a lump rise in my throat. "That's a big step," I said. "Are you sure?" He nodded, his expression steady. "She's trying, Dad. Like really trying. I can see it, and I think holding on to all this anger isn't helping me anymore." His words floored me. For all the pain and betrayal he'd endured, Tyler had found a strength and maturity beyond his years. "I'm proud of you," I said, my voice thick with emotion. "Whatever you decide, I'll support you." The next time they met, Tyler told Emily how he felt. He didn't sugarcoat it. He was honest about the hurt she'd caused, the trust she'd broken. But he also told her he was ready to forgive her. Emily cried, apologizing again, but this time, she didn't try to explain away her actions. She just listened. When Tyler came back to me afterward, he looked lighter, like a weight he'd been carrying had finally lifted. "I'm glad I said it," he said simply. Over time, their relationship began to mend, piece by piece. It would never be the same. It couldn't be, but it was something. Emily respected Tyler's boundaries, and for the first time, she seemed to be putting his needs above her own. It was a slow process, but it was real. As for me, I found my own peace in letting go of the anger I'd carried for so long. I didn't trust Emily, and I probably never would. But I no longer needed to. My focus was on Tyler, on giving him the stability and love he needed to thrive. One evening, as we sat on the porch watching the sunset, Tyler turned to me with a small smile. "I think we're going to be okay, Dad," he said. I smiled back, ruffling his hair. "Yeah, buddy, I think we are." And in that moment, I knew it was true. The road had been long and painful, but we'd made it. We'd found our way back to something whole, something strong. We were okay, and that was enough.